Hey guys, tonight we begin not with a philosopher or a conqueror, but with a pair of noble doppelgangers who accidentally turned a routine hunt into a synchronized suicide pact so uncanny the medieval church had to invent a new category of divine oops. Imagine two men, mirror images down to the scar on the left cheek, both named William, both married to an Alice, both about to lose a very personal joust with a deer. Yeah, you probably won't survive this level of cosmic prank without at least one eyebrow permanently raised. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the misty dawn of Winchester, 1145, boots sinking into the damp grass outside the city walls. The air smells of wet wool and horse sweat. Somewhere a blacksmith's hammer rings like a slow heartbeat. Two cradles rock in two different manners, but the babies inside could swap places and no one would notice. Both Williams, because originality was apparently rationed that year, open identical blue eyes to identical futures. Their wet nurses gossip over the coincidence, but the priests just nod sagely and mutter about God's mysterious copy-paste function. You follow the boys as they toddle through the same muddy courtyards, learn the same Latin conjugations from the same irritable monk, and take their first clumsy swings with wooden swords under the same grizzled swordmaster named, naturally, William. The townsfolk start placing bets on which William will sneeze first. Historians still argue whether the families ever mixed the boys up at bath time, but the chronicler Gerald of Wales swears one Alice once kissed the wrong cheek at a feast and only realized it when both husbands laughed in perfect unison. By the time the Williams hit 20, you're frankly exhausted trying to tell them apart. Same shoulder-length hair, the medieval default setting, same lopsided grin, same scar from the same jousting mishap, because even accidents come in matching sets. They marry two Alices on the same Sunday in the same church, and the priest mixes up the vows so often the bishop threatens to excommunicate the entire wedding party for inefficiency. The monks recording all this scratch their heads and write, "Verily, the Lord hath a sense of humour drier than sacrament wine." You ride out with them one crisp spring morning, two separate hunting parties, two separate forests, same exact hour. The chroniclers insist the sun hits the same angle on both lances. You watch William Prime lower his lance at a magnificent stag, spurs digging into his destrier's flanks. 3 miles away, William Secundus does the exact same choreography. The deer bolt, the lance's dip, and, plot twist, the Williams charge straight into their own weapons. Same wound, a neat puncture just below the ribcage. Same position, impaled like kebabs on their own lances. Same day. The odds make modern statisticians weep into their calculators. You arrive at the scene first with William Prime's squire, a pimply lad who drops his breakfast oatcake when he sees his lord pinned to a tree by his own lance, the deer long gone. The squire's scream carries across the valley, and 3 miles away the exact same scream echoes from William Secundus's squire. The widows, both named Alice, remember, collapse in identical heaps of black velvet, fainting at the exact same line of the same funeral hymn. The priests, both named Thomas, because England ran out of names by 1145, deliver the exact same eulogy and accidentally swap the coffins. The bishop declares it proof that God's hand moves in mysterious, slightly sarcastic ways. You linger at the double funeral, watching the townsfolk file past two identical coffins. One old woman crosses herself and mutters, "At least the laundry will be easier now." The monks, ever eager for a miracle, start a side hustle selling twin William relics, splinters of lance that supposedly grant double luck. Pilgrims flock to Winchester, hoping to touch the spot where divine coincidence achieved peak efficiency. You buy a splinter for a penny, mostly because the monk selling them has the best poker face in Hampshire. Word spreads faster than the plague ever would. Bards compose ballads titled "The Williams Who Hunted Themselves," and tavern keepers name their strongest ale Double Impale. You overhear a minstrel in Southampton singing, "Two lances, two hearts, one very confused deer." The song becomes so popular that King Stephen bans it for undermining public morale, but you catch him humming it in the bath. Historians still argue whether the deer were the same animal teleporting between forests, or if God simply hit Control-C, Control-5 on the entire scene. You visit the widows years later. Both Alices have remarried. Wait for it. Men named William. One breeds hunting dogs, the other breeds hunting falcons, and both refuse to let their new husbands anywhere near a forest. You ask Alice Prime if she ever misses the original William. She snorts and says, "Miss him? I still set two places at dinner. Out of habit, Alice Secundus, 3 streets over, says the exact same thing at the exact same moment. You check your sundial. It's not even noon. The chroniclers can't decide whether to file the story under tragedy or divine comedy. One monk writes, "Herein lies proof that the Lord delights in symmetry," while another scribbles in the margin, "or proof that nobles should stick to embroidery." You flip through the Winchester cartellary and find a tiny doodle of 2 stick figures impaled on lances, captioned, "Do not try this at home." The ink is still fresh. Someone's still giggling in 1145. You wander the cathedral close at twilight, where the 2 Williams share a single tombstone. Budget cuts, apparently. The inscription reads, "Here lie William and William, who loved the hunt and lost to it in perfect harmony." Beneath, in smaller letters, someone carved, "P.S. The deer was delicious." You run your fingers over the words and feel the stone still warm from the day's sun, as if the universe itself is chuckling. Centuries later, antiquarians dig up the tomb, looking for relics, and find 2 skeletons with identical lance wounds, still clutching fragments of the same type of oak shaft. The lead archaeologist, a man named William, drops his trowel and refuses to enter another forest for the rest of his life. You smile, because some coincidences are hereditary. You leave Winchester as the bells toll vespers, the sound rolling across the water meadows like slow applause. Somewhere in the distance, a deer lifts its head, listens, and decides today is not the day to play Lance Chicken. The monks light candles in the cathedral, 2 flames flickering in identical rhythm, and you swear you hear faint laughter echoing from the crypt. Divine boredom, you decide, is the most patient prankster of all. You walk the old Roman road out of town, boots crunching on gravel that hasn't changed since the Williams rode it. The moon rises full and silver, turning the fields into a chessboard of shadow and light. You half expect to see 2 riders on the horizon, lances lowered, chasing the same phantom stag. But the road stays empty, and the only sound is the wind rifling through the hedgerows like pages in a very old, very cheeky book. You pass a milestone carved with the distance to London, 72 miles, and notice someone has scratched beneath it, Williams, 0, deer, 2. The graffiti is weathered but legible, a medieval mic drop. You laugh out loud, and a nightbird answers from the oaks. Somewhere, a monk wakes up, convinced he's heard the twin Williams riding again. He crosses himself, pulls the blanket over his head, and prays for less symmetrical miracles. You reach the city gates as the watchman changes shift. He eyes your pilgrim badge. Yes, you bought one, and asks if you've come to see the famous tomb. You nod, and he lowers his voice. "Between you and me," he says, "the deer still visits on the anniversary. Big fellow, antlers like cathedral spires. Stands right where it happened and stares at the forest like it's waiting for round 2. You thank him, slip a coin into his palm, and step into the night. The streets of Winchester are quiet now, the shops shuttered, the dogs asleep. You find an inn called the Prancing Stag, subtle, and order a mug of small beer. The innkeeper, a woman named Alice, of course, pours it with a flourish. "You're the 10th pilgrim this week," she says, all asking about the Williams. "Want to know the real secret?" You lean in. She taps the side of her nose. "They weren't twins. They were the same man, split by a witch's curse. Every year on the anniversary, he rides both hunts at once. That's why the deer never dies. It's chasing itself. You raise an eyebrow. She winks. Or maybe nobles are just that stupid. You finish your beer and step outside. The moon is high, the air cool and sharp. You think about curses and coincidences, about scars and symmetry, about two men who lived the same life and died the same death because fate, apparently, has a subscription to recycling. You pull your cloak tighter and head for the city walls, where the old hunting forest begins. The trees are black against the sky, their branches like lances raised in salute. You walk until the city lights fade, and the only sound is your footsteps on the Roman road. Somewhere in the dark, a twig snaps. You freeze. Another snap, closer. Then silence. You wait, heart thumping like a war drum, half expecting a stag with glowing eyes to charge out of the underbrush. Instead, a fox darts across the path, pauses, and looks back at you with what might be amusement. You laugh, the sound startling a parliament of owls into flight. You reach the spot where the first William died, a clearing ringed by ancient oaks, the ground still scarred where the lance pinned him. You kneel, brush away leaves, and find a shard of oak embedded in the earth, polished smooth by centuries of rain. You pocket it, a splinter of history sharper than any relic. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. You close your eyes and listen. For a moment, you swear you hear hoofbeats, two sets, perfectly in sync, fading into the forest. You open your eyes. The clearing is empty, the moon unchanged. You smile, because some stories don't need ghosts to haunt you. They just need perfect timing. You turn back toward Winchester, the shard of lance warm in your pocket, and whistle the tune from the band ballad. Behind you, the forest rustles, as if the trees themselves are applauding. You reach the city gates just before they close, slipping through with a nod to the watchman. He's telling the new guard about the deer with cathedral antlers. You don't correct him. Some legends are better left unbroken. You find your bed at the inn, the straw mattress lumpy but honest, and drift off to the sound of Alice the innkeeper humming the very ballad King Stephen band. In your dreams, two Williams ride side by side, lances raised, laughing as they chase a stag made of starlight. Morning comes soft and grey. You wake to the smell of fresh bread and the clatter of carts. The shard of lance is still in your pocket, warm as if it's been sunbaked. You dress, pay Alice with a silver penny and a wink, and step into the street. The city is alive again, merchants shouting, children chasing hoops, dogs barking at nothing. You head for the cathedral, drawn by the promise of one last look at the tomb. The nave is cool and dim, the air thick with incense and echo. You find the tomb in the south transept, the stone worn smooth by centuries of pilgrim hands. The inscription is faded but legible, and beneath the official Latin someone has carved in tiny letters, "Deer, still undefeated." You trace the words and feel the stone vibrate, or maybe that's just your imagination. You light a candle, two, actually, one for each William, and watch the flames dance in perfect unison. You leave the cathedral as the bells ring tierce, the sound rolling over the rooftops like a gentle wave. Outside, the sky has cleared, and the sun strikes the cathedral spire so brightly it hurts to look. You shield your eyes and see, on the horizon, a lone deer grazing at the edge of the forest. It lifts its head, antlers catching the light like a crown, and for a heartbeat, you're back in 1145, watching two lances lower in perfect sync. Then the deer bounds away, vanishing into the trees, and the moment breaks like a spell. You walk the old Roman road one last time, boots crunching on gravel that remembers every footstep. The shard of lance is heavy in your pocket, a splinter of eternity. You think about symmetry and sarcasm, about scars and second chances, about two men who lived the same life and died the same death, Because sometimes the universe just wants to see if you're paying attention. You smile, because you are. You reach the city gates and pause, looking back at Winchester spread out like a jeweled map. Somewhere in the cathedral, 2 candles burn side by side. Somewhere in the forest, a deer grazes, waiting for the next hunt that will never come. And somewhere in the annals of history, 2 Williams ride forever, lances raised, laughing at the joke only the stars understand. You turn and walk into the morning, the road stretching ahead like a promise. Behind you, the bells of Winchester fade into the distance, but the echo of hoofbeats follows you all the way to the horizon. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left chasing their own tails. You kneel in the choir stalls of Canterbury Cathedral, 1170, the stone cold beneath your knees, and the air thick with beeswax and murmured Latin. The monks' voices rise and fall like slow waves, the same hymn they've sung every Vespers for decades. But tonight the notes tremble with something extra. Call it destiny clearing its throat. You're shoulder to shoulder with Brother Edmund, a wiry man whose tonsure is slightly off-center, as if even his hairline couldn't decide where to settle. He smells faintly of ink and onions, the medieval equivalent of a stress snack. The choir reaches the line about eternal light when Edmund freezes mid-breath. His mouth stays open, the note dying like a candle in wind. You feel the hush ripple outward. In a monastery, silence during chant is basically a felony. The prior's glare could curdle milk, but Edmund doesn't notice. His eyes are wide, fixed on a point somewhere beyond the altar, and he whispers, "He is dead." The words are soft, but in the vaulted nave, they bounce like a dropped chalice. You follow his gaze, nothing but flickering candles and shadows, but the hair on your neck rises anyway. Someone behind you drops a psalter. The thud is deafening. The prior hisses, "Who?" And Edmund, now officially the monastery's unwilling prophet, answers, "Our archbishop." You taste iron. You've bitten your tongue without realizing. Outside, hooves thunder on the flagstones, growing louder, closer, until the great west door bursts open and a messenger staggers in, cloak torn, face white as parchment. "Thomas Becket," he gasps, "murdered in this very cathedral." You spin toward the north transept, where the deed is still warm. The monks pour out of the choir like black ants from a kicked nest, sandals slapping stone. You're swept along, heart hammering in sync with the messenger's boots. The transept smells of blood and cold iron. 4 knights stand over the body, swords dripping, looking suddenly unsure whether regicide comes with a receipt. Becket lies sprawled, skull split, brains glistening like wet marble. One knight nudges the corpse with a mailed foot and mutters, "He will rise no more." Famous last words, buddy. Back in the choir, the monks cluster around Edmund like he's suddenly sprouted a halo. He's shaking, pale, repeating, "I heard it." Clear as the bell. You ask what exactly he heard. He says a voice, not words, just a feeling like a door slamming in heaven. Historians still argue whether Edmund had thin walls and excellent hearing, or if the cathedral's acoustics accidentally moonlight as a divine intercom. The abbot orders the doors barred, no one in, no one out, because nothing says holy revelation like a lockdown. You spend the night in the chapter house, candlelight flickering over terrified faces. The monks take turns praying, confessing, and quietly wondering who's next. One novice keeps checking under his cot for nights. You doze fitfully and dream of Becket's blood spelling out Latin puns on the floor. Dawn finds the cathedral surrounded by townsfolk, pilgrims, and a growing swarm of relic-hungry vultures. The king's men ride in to investigate, which mostly involves shouting at monks and confiscating the good wine. Edmund becomes an instant celebrity. Pilgrims beg to touch his hem. One woman offers her firstborn for a lock of his hair. The monks build a shrine where he stood, basically a fancy music stand with a plaque reading, "Site of Heavenly Spoiler Alert." Artists paint Edmund with a golden ear trumpet. Ballads call him the monk who heard death sneeze. You buy a pilgrim badge shaped like an ear for a halfpenny, mostly because the vendor throws in a free splinter of the north transept floorboard. You follow the fallout for weeks. Henry II, barefoot and dramatic, does penance at the cathedral doors, letting monks whip him like a piñata. Each lash echoes through the nave. You count 12, one for each year of their feud. The king's back looks like a topographical map of regret. Meanwhile, miracles explode. A blind man sees, a lame girl dances, a priest's hangover vanishes. The church declares Becket a martyr faster than you can say canonization express lane. Edmund, though, wants none of it. You find him in the scriptorium, copying psalms with trembling hands. "I just wanted to finish Vespers," he mutters. You ask if he hears anything now. He listens, then shakes his head. Only the abbot's stomach growling. But years later, another monk swears he heard voices before a fire broke out in the cathedral. The abbot institutes a new rule: no prophecies during chant. Bad for morale and insurance rates. You linger in Canterbury as the shrine grows. Gold, jewels, and crutches left by the cured pile up like divine yard sale. Pilgrims sing Edmund's ballad off-key. One group harmonizes so badly you suspect divine punishment. You visit the murder site, now scrubbed clean, but still smelling faintly of iron, and notice a tiny crack in the stone shaped like an ear. You press your own ear to it. Nothing but distant kitchen clatter. Still, you leave a penny, just in case. Centuries later, antiquarians measure the transept and calculate the exact second the messenger burst in. They conclude the timing was impossible without supernatural aid. You smile because medieval acoustics were impressive, but not that impressive. You walk the cloister at twilight, where monks once froze mid-note, and hear the wind whisper through the arches like a half-remembered hymn. Somewhere, Edmund is still listening. You leave Canterbury with a pilgrim badge in your pocket and a tune in your head. The road to London is muddy, the sky the colour of wet slate. You pass a tavern where a bard mangles the ballad. Brother Edmund heard the chop, chop, chop. You correct him. He buys you ale. The ale is warm, the company warmer, and for a moment you're just another traveller with a story no one will believe. You reach London as the bells toll none, the sound rolling over the Thames like slow thunder. You think about voices and visions, about thin walls and thick skulls, about a monk who heard death coming and couldn't unhear it. You smile, because some coincidences are just God hitting the fast-forward button on history. You find a bench by the river, watch the water carry candlelight from the city, and listen. For a heartbeat, you swear you hear a whisper, not words, just a feeling, like a door opening in heaven. Then a fish jumps, and the moment breaks like a spell. You laugh, because some stories don't need ghosts to haunt you. They just need perfect timing. You crouch in the dusty nave of Modena's cathedral, 1,350, paint flakes drifting from the scaffolding like slow-motion snow. The air smells of wet plaster, linseed oil, and the faint sweetness of incense curling from a side chapel. Tommaso Deodati balances on a plank 20 feet up, his tunic streaked with ochre and verdigris, beard flecked with gold leaf. He's humming a tune you half recognize, something about a nightingale and a very confused saint, while he daubs the final details on a fresco that will make future generations choke on their wine. You tilt your head to follow his brush. There, on the north wall above the cloister door, a procession of monks marches in solemn silence. Nothing unusual. Medieval art loves a good parade, until you notice the masks. Long, hollow beaks curve from their hoods like herons gone Gothic, eye holes ringed in black, straps cinched tight. The beaks are stuffed with dark sprigs that look suspiciously like rosemary and rue. Tommaso steps back, squints, and nods. "Perfect," he mutters. "Smells terrible, but perfect." You ask what inspired the get-up. He shrugs, wipes his brush on his sleeve. Dreamed it. Plague coming, faces falling off, doctors needing something to breathe through. Figured herbs might help you laugh, because plague is still a century away. and bird masks sound like carnival nonsense. But he just taps the side of his nose and says, "Mark my words, kid. One day, they'll thank me." You linger in Modena as the fresco dries. The canons grumble about the macabre imagery, especially its prime placement beside the refectory, where monks now eat stew under the gaze of nightmare poultry. But the bishop loves it. Art should unsettle, he declares, and commissions Tommaso to paint a matching scene of the Last Judgment, complete with demons wearing the same masks. You watch the artist work, his strokes loose and confident, as if he's copying from memory rather than imagination. By 1450, the Black Death has turned Europe into a charnel house. You stand in the same cloister, now ankle-deep in quicklime and despair, while physicians waddle past in long robes, leather aprons, and, sweet mercy, those exact bird-beak masks. The beaks are packed with lavender, vinegar-soaked sponges, and whatever herbs the apothecary swears will filter miasma. The doctors smell like a salad drowned in cologne, but the resemblance to Tommaso's fresco is so precise you half expect the painted monks to step off the wall and start taking pulses. Panic ripples through the city. Pilgrims flood the cathedral, pointing at the mural and crossing themselves so hard they dislocate shoulders. "Sorcery!" screams a Dominican. "Miracle!" counters the abbot, who immediately slaps a donation box beneath the painting. Offerings pile up, coins, rosaries, one very confused chicken. The fresco's eyes are said to follow you. Candlelight makes the beaks glint like real glass. You test the rumor at midnight. The eyes do not move. The chicken, however, escapes and terrorizes the sacristy. You follow the frenzy for months. Pamphlets circulate with woodcuts of the mural captioned, "Tommaso saw the future." Ballads rename him the prophet of the beak. One enterprising merchant sells miniature mask pendants guaranteed to ward off plague. Business booms until the Inquisition confiscates his stall for trafficking in false relics. You buy one anyway, because the craftsmanship is solid and the irony is free. Historians still argue whether Tommaso copied a lost medical treatise, suffered a prophetic fever dream, or simply had an uncanny knack for predicting fashion disasters. You lean toward the fever dream. The man once painted a dragon wearing spectacles, and no one batted an eye. You visit the fresco at dusk, when the cloister is empty and the light turns the beaks bronze. You run your fingers over the plaster, cool, slightly rough, and feel the faint texture of brushstrokes. A novice lighting lamps pauses, whispers, "They say if you stand here during Compline, the painted monks breathe." You wait. The only breathing is yours, and the novice's, and the distant wheeze of a dying man in the infirmary. Still, you leave a sprig of rosemary on the sill, just in case. Centuries later, restorers peel back layers of grime and find Tommaso's signature hidden in the beak of the lead monk. T. defecit, et venturum, vidit. T.D. made this, and saw what was to come. The inscription becomes academic catnip. Theses are written, conferences held. One professor claims the herbs are coded alchemical symbols. You attend the lecture, fall asleep, wake to find the professor wearing a replica mask for immersion. You slip out before the Q&A. You return to Modena in spring when the cloister garden blooms with rosemary and rue, the same herbs stuffed in those plague beaks. You pick a sprig, tuck it behind your ear, and stand beneath the fresco. The painted monks stare down, serene and smug, as if to say, "Told you so." You smile, because some coincidences are just history winking at itself. You leave the cathedral as the bells toll vespers, the sound rolling over the red-tiled roofs like warm honey. Somewhere, a physician adjusts his mask and mutters about miasma. Somewhere, a monk ladles stew and avoids eye contact with the wall. And somewhere, Tommaso Deodati laughs in his grave because his fresco went viral a century after release, and the comments section is still open. You grip the reins of a half-blind Destria in the fog-choked dawn of Cressy, 1346, the ground already slick with dew and destiny. King John of Bohemia sits astride his own mount, milky eyes staring at nothing. yet his voice rings clear. Lead me where the fight is thickest. His knights exchange glances that say, this will not end well. But they tie their horses to his. 5 beasts knotted together like the world's most doomed conga line, and charge. You're swept along in the press, heart hammering against your ribs, because even blind men ride like thunder when glory's on the menu. John lost his sight years ago to some court physician's miracle cure, involving hot irons and optimism. Most kings would retire to tapestry and regret. John? He treats blindness like a minor inconvenience, the way you treat a missing sock. Chroniclers say he laughed when the English longbows loosed their first volley, arrows hissing like angry geese. You duck as one thuds into the shield of the knight beside you. John just spurs harder, shouting, neither can they see once I'm done. You admire the confidence. You also admire the medic who's about to need a new job. The field is chaos. Mud, screams, the wet smack of steel on flesh. The tied horses stumble but keep formation, a blind battering ram of chivalry. You lose sight of John in the crush, literally, since he can't see you either, until a collective gasp rises. The king's party is down, horses tangled, men pinned beneath. John's sword arm is still raised, frozen mid-swing, an arrow buried in his throat. The knot of knights lies around him like petals around a very dead flower. You kneel in the muck, close his eyes out of habit, and notice the arrows fletching. English yew, same as every other arrow on the field. Symmetry, medieval style. Fast forward 2 centuries. You're back on the same cursed patch of French soil, 1546, now called something pompous in Latin because battlefields love rebranding. Another blind noble, Charles de Pro, Viscount of somewhere that sounds like a sneeze, decides history's a choose-your-own-adventure book. He's half blind from cataracts, fully mad with ambition, and insists on leading a charge. His knights sigh, tie their horses to his, because tradition is sacred, and off they go. You ride stirrup to stirrup, déjà vu, thick as the fog. The Viscount bellows, for glory, which is Old French for hold my wine. The English, sorry, now it's the Holy Roman Empire, details, loose crossbow bolts this time. One finds the Viscount's throat with the precision of a bored Cupid. The knot of horses collapses in a heap of velvet and regret. You dismount, kneel again, and close another pair of sightless eyes. The arrow, bolt, is embedded in the exact same spot as John's. You measure with your thumb, same depth, same angle, same, why do we keep doing this, expression on the corpse. You linger on the field as the scavengers descend. A grizzled sergeant pries a gold spur from John's boot, muttering, blind or not, the man had taste. 200 years later, another sergeant says the exact same thing about Charles. You overhear a camp follower composing a ballad. 2 kings, 2 throats, 1 very patient arrow. It'll be a hit in Paris taverns by winter. Historians still argue whether the battlefield has a grudge, or if blind nobles share a cosmic group chat titled, Terrible Ideas Are Us. You vote grudge. The soil here is iron-rich, arrows love it. You scoop a handful, let it sift through your fingers like red sand. Somewhere, a horse whinnies, spooked probably by the ghost of bad decisions. You follow the aftermath. John's body is carried to Luxembourg, entombed with his sword across his chest like he might still swing it. Charles gets a quieter funeral. His heirs are too embarrassed to invite the king. Both become proverbs. Blind as Bohemia, for reckless courage. Charge like Pro, for suicidal stupidity. You hear a child in Calais use the latter while jumping off a haystack. The child lands badly. Some lessons stick. Centuries later, battlefield tourists poke the ground with walking sticks, hoping to unearth a relic. One finds a rusted spur and declares it John's. Another finds an identical spur and declares it Charles's. You buy both for a sou because irony is cheaper than authenticity. You hang them on your saddlebag. They clink like tiny bells of doom. You camp on the field one misty evening, fire crackling, stars sharp as arrowheads. You toast the blind kings with sour wine, and wonder if they're up there, still charging at phantom enemies. A shooting star streaks overhead, straight through the throat of Orion. You laugh so hard you spill your wine. Divine comedy, indeed. You leave Cressy at dawn, the road rutted with centuries of wagon wheels and bad ideas. Behind you, the field is quiet, but you swear you hear hoofbeats. 5 horses, knotted together, riding into fog that never lifts. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left to their own reruns. You kneel in the scriptorium of a Benedictine abbey near Trier, 1231, the air thick with vellum dust and the scratch of quills. Sunlight slants through high windows, gilding the hunched backs of monks who believe ink is mightier than fire. Brother Anselm, the abbot's favourite brown nose, dips his goose feather into gall ink and pens the final flourish on a manuscript titled On the Protection of Holy Houses. The pages glow with gold leaf, lapis lazuli, and prayers against every disaster from flood to Viking. You lean over his shoulder. The parchment smells like honey and hubris. Anselm pauses, quill trembling, then adds one last line at the bottom of the final page. This library shall never burn, for it is blessed by the hand of God. He underlines it twice, blows the ink dry, and beams like a cat who's just eaten the canary in the cage. You wince so hard your teeth ache. The other monks murmur approval, because nothing says tempt fate like a boast in Latin, but you smell smoke already, and it's not from the incense burner. 3 weeks later, you're roused from Compline by a crack like God splitting kindling. Lightning forks across the sky, strikes the bell tower, and the abbey erupts in flame. You stumble into the cloister as sparks rain like hellish confetti. Monks run in circles, some clutching relics, others clutching their heads. The library roof collapses with a roar that rattles your bones. You shield your face from the heat. The fire is white hot, hungry and laughing. You join the bucket brigade, passing sloshing pails from the well, while the scriptorium windows burst outward in showers of molten glass. The heat blisters your palms. The smoke tastes of charred parchment and melted pride. By dawn, the abbey is a blackened skeleton, ribs of stone still glowing. The monks sift through ashes, weeping over lost psalters, and one very singed copy of the Song of Songs. Then someone shouts. You push through the crowd and see it. A single parchment, pristine, lying atop a pile of cinders like a lily in a battlefield. It's the final page, the one with the boast. The ink is unsmudged, the gold leaf gleaming. The monks fall to their knees, calling it a miracle. You call it divine sarcasm with a side of third-degree burns. The abbot declares a new feast day. The cook declares the stew ruined. You pocket a corner of charred vellum that reads, "Shall never," and feel the universe wink. Word spreads faster than the fire did. Pilgrims arrive to gawk at the page, now framed in silver and displayed in the rebuilt chapter house. One monk swears the letters glow at midnight. Another swears the paper smells of roses. You sniff it at midnight. It smells of smoke and smugness. The abbey becomes famous. Donations pour in. The monks rebuild bigger, better, and, crucially, without lightning rods, because faith. 40 years later, you're back for the anniversary feast. The new library is a marvel of vaulted ceilings and iron-bound doors. The boastful page hangs center stage, backlit by candles. The abbot raises a toast. "To divine protection!" Lightning answers. The tower takes another hit, the roof caves, and the library burns hotter than before. You dive for cover as the silver frame melts like butter. When the smoke clears, guess what's intact? The same damn page, now slightly curled, but still readable. The monks are beyond weeping. They're laughing hysterically. You join in, because at this point, it's either laugh or convert to paganism. Historians still argue whether the parchment was treated with some secret fireproofing alum, or if God simply enjoys a long-running gag. You vote gag. The page becomes a relic. Copies are made. One ends up in the Vatican, where a cardinal uses it as a bookmark and loses 3 fingers to a candle. The moral, never brag in ink, spreads through monasteries like head lice, yet monks keep writing absurd claims. This book cannot be lost. These words are eternal. Brother Anselm definitely didn't steal my quills. Every single one burns, eventually. You leave the smouldering abbey with soot in your hair and a new proverb in your pocket. Pride goeth before the ash. The road to Trier is lined with pilgrims carrying tiny replicas of the page, sold by an enterprising novice who's already planning his retirement. You buy one for the irony, pin it to your cloak, and watch it singe in the sun. Somewhere, lightning chuckles. You stand on the blood-slick ridge of Stiklestad, 10:30, the air sharp with iron and pine. King Olaf Haraldsson, Olaf II to his friends, saint-in-waiting to the chroniclers, plants his banner in the frost-hard ground and bellows a war cry that rattles the fjords. He's here to convert Norway the hard way. Sword first, sermon later. His men cheer, axes gleaming, but the rebel farmers below outnumber them 3-1 and look less than thrilled about the salvation package. You grip your shield tighter. The wind smells of snow and bad decisions. The battle erupts like a dam breaking. Arrows arc overhead, black against a pewter sky. You duck as one thuds into the man beside you, but Olaf just laughs, beard iced with breath. He's in the thick of it, swinging a broadsword like he's chopping firewood for heaven. Then it happens. A farmer's arrow, fletched with goose feathers, finds the gap in Olaf's mail and punches clean through his throat. He staggers, blood bubbling, but manages one last grin before collapsing. The banner falls. The fight drains out of his men. You kneel in the mud, close his eyes, and note the arrow's angle, straight in, slightly upward, a perfect bullseye on royalty. Fast forward 2 centuries. You're back on the same ridge, 12:30, the ground still scarred with old fire pits and older grudges. Another Olaf, Olaf IV, because Norway recycles names like England recycles Williams, rides in with the same banner, the same mission, the same date on the calendar. His advisors beg him to pick a different valley. He waves them off, claiming, "God decides the hour of every king's death." You wince. The farmers below look eerily familiar, same pitchforks, same unimpressed expressions. The clash is déjà vu in chainmail. Arrows hiss, steel sings, and you're ducking the same goose-fletched shaft. Olaf IV charges the front line, roaring about divine right, when, thunk, an arrow finds the exact same spot in his throat. Same angle, same gurgle, same collapse. You catch him as he falls, feel the warmth leave his body, and check the wound, identical to Olaf II's, down to the millimeter. The banner drops again. The farmers cheer again. You swear the ridge itself sighs. You linger as the bodies are carried off. Olaf II's men built a shrine on the spot. Olaf IV's men add a second stone. Pilgrims start calling it Double Saint Ridge, leaving offerings of mead and mittens. One monk carves both kings' names on a runestone, then adds in tiny letters. Note to future Olafs. Try diplomacy. The soil here is iron-rich. Locals swear it bleeds on the anniversary. Geologists later confirm it's just oxidized peat. But you've seen the stains. Dark, arterial, stubborn. Word spreads through Scandinavia like a bad cold. Bards sing the ballad of the two-throat Olafs. Taverns toast to kings who die on schedule. You hear a scold in Trondheim add a verse about arrows with excellent aim and kings with poor calendars. The church canonizes both Olafs, because when your monarchy keeps dying the same way, you market it. Double relics, double feast days, double the donation boxes. Historians still argue whether the valley has a grudge, the arrows share GPS, or the Olafs consulted the same suicidal stylist. You vote stylist. You camp on the ridge one midsummer night, fire crackling, northern lights flickering like green applause. You toast the kings with aquavit and swear you hear hoofbeats. 2 sets, perfectly synced, galloping into legend. A raven lands nearby. tilts its head, and caws once. You nod. Message received. You leave Stickelstad at dawn, the runestone warm under your palm. Behind you, the ridge is quiet, but the wind carries the faint whistle of arrows that never miss. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left to their own encores. You huddle in the dim basilica of St. John Lateran, Rome, 897, the air stale with myrrh and malice. Torches sputter in iron sconces, casting long shadows that dance like guilty consciences across the mosaic floor. Pope Stephen VI, because papal numbering is a game of telephone, paces the apse, his cope dragging like a guilty verdict. Before him, propped on a throne of carved ivory, sits the star witness, Pope Formosus, 9 months dead, dressed in rotting papal robes that smell of Tiber mud and regret. The cadaver's jaw is wired shut with gold thread. A deacon stands beside it, whispering defences that echo hollow in the vaulted silence. You shift on the hard bench among the council of bishops, their faces pale as unleavened bread. Stephen screams accusations: blasphemy, perjury, usurpation. At the corpse, veins bulging like rivers on a bad map. The deacon, sweating through his alb, mumbles about Formosus's intentions toward the throne. You bite back a laugh. This is the Cadaver Synod, history's most unhinged courtroom drama, where the defendant can't cross-examine because he's busy decomposing. Mainstream fact: Formosus was a real pope, elected in 891 after surviving Byzantine intrigue and Lombard plots. But Stephen hated him for crowning a rival king. The trial drags like a funeral procession in August heat. Stephen strips the corpse of its vestments, pallia, fluttering to the floor like surrendered flags, and declares it guilty. 3 fingers off, he bellows, and a surgeon hacks away the blessing digits with a silver knife. The body gets reburied as a layman, then, because closure is for the living, dragged to the Tiber and dumped like yesterday's fish guts. You follow the procession through torchlit streets, the crowd muttering about curses and bad omens. Quirky tidbit: the Tiber spits Formosus back weeks later, bloated but perfectly preserved, washing up at St. Peter's steps like a divine FedEx return to sender. You arrive at the riverbank at dawn, the water lapping grey and oily. The corpse floats serene, robes billowing like drowned sails, eyes milky but staring heavenward. Pilgrims cross themselves. Fishmongers poke it with poles. Stephen, hearing the news, locks himself in the Lateran and starts hallucinating drowned popes in his soup. Excessive zeal, the chronicles call it politely. You call it karma with a swim cap. Months later, he's imprisoned by his own clergy, strangled in his cell with a bedsheet that probably smelled like regret. Historians still argue whether the flood was freak weather or Formosus moonlighting as a zombie lobbyist. You linger in Rome as the scandal festers. Formosus gets reburied with honours, 3rd time's the charm, and canonized on the sly. Stephen's successors scrub the synod from records, but ballads persist. The Pope who drowned his grudge. You hear one in a Trastevere tavern, the singer adding a verse about the corpse winking at witnesses. The drink is watered, the laughter isn't. 2 centuries pass in a blur of schisms and side-eye. You're back in the Lateran, 1097, for another Stephen IX, because irony is papal policy. He's mid-sermon, thundering against sins of the flesh and the cadaverous, when he clutches his chest and drops dead on the exact anniversary of Formosus's exhumation. The congregation gasps. You check the calendar. Same day, same month. The body lands with a thud that echoes like divine punctuation. Monks whisper of the curse of the Cadaver Synod. You whisper for more wine. The curse sticks like incense smoke. Popes avoid the Lateran crypt. One cardinal swears he hears splashing from the walls. You visit the tomb, now a gilded shrine, and leave a sprig of Tiber weeds. A novice giggles. Better than fingers. You nod. Some relics are sharper than others. You walk the forum at twilight, where ancient ghosts mingle with papal ones. The air hums with cicadas and unfinished business. Somewhere downstream, the Tiber chuckles. carrying secrets older than the city. You don't swim. Some trials end with verdicts, others with very wet appeals. You trudge barefoot along a dusty road outside Paris, summer 1212, the sun a hammer on your skull, and the air thick with time and desperation. Around you stretches a river of children, thousands of them, ages 6 to 16, rags fluttering like prayer flags, eyes shining with the kind of certainty only the young and the doomed can muster. Leading the pack is Stephen of Cloyes, a 12-year-old shepherd with a voice like a cracked bell and a vision straight from angel express delivery. "The sea will part for the pure," he shouts, waving a wooden cross that looks suspiciously like a broken shepherd's crook. You wince. Moses had a staff and a direct line to God. This kid has lice and enthusiasm. The Children's Crusade begins with hymns and ends with heartbreak, but you're here for the whole tragic loop-de-loop. Mainstream fact. Chroniclers like Alberic of Trois-Fontaines record 2 separate waves, Stephen's French flock and Nicholas's German one. Both convinced divine innocence could reclaim Jerusalem, where armored knights failed. Quirky tidbit. One German chronicle claims Nicholas carried a tau-shaped cross that sweated blood on hot days. Modern scholars say it was just cheap red paint and wishful thinking. You march with the French column, feet blistered, stomach growling. The kids sing psalms off-key, trade crusts of bread, and tell stories of angels promising dry-shod passage to the Holy Land. Adults line the roads, some tossing apples, others shaking heads. One priest tries to stop them at Troyes. The children pelt him with pebbles and march on. You reach the Mediterranean at Marseille, the sea glittering like a cruel promise. Stephen raises his cross. "Part, O waters." The tide rolls in, unimpressed. A merchant offers ships for the glory of God. Translation: for the glory of North African slave markets. You watch the first boats load, children waving goodbye with the confidence of tourists who packed only faith. Cut to Cologne, 1212, same fever dream in German. Nicholas, 15, blonde and charismatic as a cult leader, rallies another army of innocents. They cross the Alps, half freeze, half starve, singing the same psalms in a different key. You slip between columns like a ghost with sore feet, counting the dead, dysentery, bandits, sheer stupidity. The survivors reach Genoa. The sea laughs again. Merchants load the rest onto ships bound for Tunis. You stay ashore, because even irony has limits. 2 centuries later, you're back on the same roads, 1412 now, the dust unchanged, the desperation recycled. Another wave of children, another vision, another shepherd boy named, this time, Jin. Same route, same psalms, same angelic PowerPoint presentation. Historians still argue whether the Second Crusade was real, or chroniclers hitting copy-paste on tragedy. You vote real, because the slave markets in Alexandria report a bumper crop of fair-haired teens that year. You follow Jean's flock to the sea, the cycle spinning like a broken prayer wheel. The ships wait, the merchants smile. The Mediterranean stays stubbornly wet. You count the empty shoes left on the docks, thousands of them, small, worn, silent. Somewhere, Stephen and Nicholas nod from whatever afterlife reserves seats for well-meaning disasters. You leave the coast at dusk, the sky bleeding orange into the water. Behind you, the last child boards, singing about dry land and glory. The song fades with the wind. You don't look back. Some crusades aren't won with swords. They're lost with hope. You crouch in the smoky haze of a 13th century English tavern, the air thick with ale fumes, roasted mutton, and the kind of gossip that could start a small war. It's a Tuesday in 1247, and the door bursts open like a bad omen. Sir Walter de Clifford, tall, red-haired, and currently accused of murder, stumbles in, cloak torn, eyes wild. The sheriff's men are 3 tankards behind him. Walter scans the room, spots the back door, and bolts like a fox with a warrant. You duck as he vaults a table, spilling someone's dinner and everyone's secrets. By the time the sheriff barges in, Walter is a rumour vanishing into the Welsh hills. The chronicler scribbles, fled and presumed guilty. The tavern erupts in laughter. Someone starts a drinking game called Do a Clifford. Fast forward 50 years. Same tavern, same Tuesday, same red-haired Walter. Grandson, same name, same hairline of regret. He's deep in his cups, arguing with a merchant over whose saint is holier. When the accusation flies, murder again, same victim profile. Drunk, offended, and now very dead. The sheriff's men crash through the door like déjà vu in chainmail. Walter freezes, mug halfway to lips. Then, plot twist, bolts for the same back door. You time it with a sundial. Identical sprint, identical leap over the same table. Still sticky from 1247. Identical disappearance into Wales. The chronicler, now an old man with arthritis and déjà vu, writes the exact same line, fled and presumed guilty. The tavern invents a new rule, no Cliffords on Tuesdays. Another century spins by. You're back in the tavern, now called the Running Clifford because branding is forever, and the door bursts open on the same cursed Tuesday. Another Walter, same hair, same panic, same murder rap, this time a bishop's nephew because the family escalates. The sheriff's men are practically on autopilot. Walter bolts, vaults, vanishes. You check the parish records. Same date, same tavern, same Welsh hills. The chronicler, now a ghost with a quill, writes the same line for the third time. The tavern keeper hangs a sign, no Cliffords, ever. It's ignored like a Lenten fast. The family becomes slang. Doing a Clifford means skipping trial with style. Bards sing the ballad of the red-haired runners. Taverns toast to legs faster than justice. You hear a child in Shrewsbury use it while fleeing a scolding. The child trips. Some lessons are genetic. Historians still argue whether the Cliffords were cursed, incompetent, or just consistently bad at hiding bodies. You vote bodies. You camp in the Welsh hills one moonless night, fire crackling, stars sharp as sheriff's stars. You toast the Walters with small beer and swear you hear footsteps, 3 sets, perfectly synced, running into legend. An owl hoots. You nod. Message received. You leave the tavern at dawn, the sign creaking in the wind. Behind you, the hills are quiet, but the wind carries the faint thud of boots that never stop. You don't look back. Some dynasties aren't built on castles. They're built on exits. You cling to the windswept ramparts of Montsegur, 1244. The Pyrenees clawing at a sky the colour of bruised iron. Below, the Catholic siege engines groan like wooden giants, hurling stones that crack against the fortress walls and send shards of limestone spinning into the void. Inside, 200 Catha perfecti, men and women robed in black, faces gaunt from 10 months of starvation, sing a hymn so pure it slices through the cannonade. They have refused every offer to recant. The inquisitors promised life, the perfecti chose fire. You taste ash on the wind long before the pyres are lit. The end comes at dawn. The garrison surrenders. The perfecti file out in silence, barefoot on frost-rimed stone. You walk among them, boots crunching, heart heavy as the siege towers. At the base of the mountain, in a meadow ringed by crusader tents, workers have stacked a bonfire the size of a small church. Pine logs, straw, pitch. The perfecti form a circle, join hands, and step forward as one. No screams, no pleas. The flames leap, orange and gold, and for one impossible heartbeat, the fire shapes itself into a perfect cross against the night sky. You blink. The cross holds, steady as a cathedral rose window. The crusaders gasp, cross themselves, then look away. Chroniclers scribble Signum Crucis in Igne, a cross of fire. You call it physics on a windy night, but the wind is wrong. It's blowing the wrong way. Exactly 100 years later, 1344, same meadow, same date. You stand in the same spot, now a shepherd's field dotted with thistles. Lightning forks without warning, strikes a lone oak, and the tree explodes into flame. You shield your eyes as the fire races across dry grass, devouring the meadow in minutes. When the smoke clears, the burned ground forms, impossible, undeniable, a perfect cross, black on green, edges crisp as charcoal scripture. Villagers drop to their knees. Pilgrims arrive before the ashes cool. The church calls it a warning. The locals call it a sequel nobody ordered. You linger through both centuries, watching the legend grow. After the first fire, the meadow becomes a shrine. Relics appear. A Cathar prayer book that survived the flames. A bone fragment labeled St. Cathar. Spoiler, it's sheep. After the second, the shrine doubles in size. 2 crosses now, one etched in memory, one in carbon. Merchants sell ash in tiny vials. One claims his batch glows on feast days. You buy a vial, shake it under moonlight. It glows. Fireflies. Close enough. Historians still argue whether the crosses were optical illusions, wind patterns, or divine branding. You vote branding. You camp on the meadow one equinox night, fireflies drifting like slow sparks. You toast the perfecti with watered wine and swear you hear singing. 200 voices, perfectly synced, rising into legend. A nightjar calls. You nod. Message received. You leave Montsegur at dawn. The double cross warm under your palm. Behind you, the meadow is quiet, but the wind carries the faint crackle of flames that never quite die. You don't look back. Some martyrdoms aren't ended by fire. They're renewed by it. You walk the old pilgrim road down the mountain, boots crunching on gravel that remembers every footstep. The air smells of pine and distant wood smoke, the same scent that clung to the perfecti as they stepped into the flames. You think about faith and fire, about crosses drawn in ash and memory, about 200 souls who chose light over life and left a mark that time can't erase. You smile, because some stories don't need miracles to burn forever, they just need wind. You reach the valley as the bells of a distant monastery toll prime, the sound rolling across the fields like a gentle wave. Somewhere, a shepherd lights his morning fire and sees the shape in the smoke. Somewhere, a child traces the cross in the dirt and asks why it glows. And somewhere, deep in the earth, the perfecti sleep in silence, their hymn still echoing in the stones. You pause at a wayside shrine, 2 crosses now, carved side by side, and leave a sprig of thyme from the meadow. The wind picks it up, carries it upward, and for a heartbeat, the air shimmers like heat over flames. You close your eyes and listen. The singing is softer now, slower, like a lullaby for the mountains themselves. You open your eyes. The shrine is empty, the time gone, the moment broken like a spell. You walk on, the road stretching ahead like a promise kept. Behind you, the bells fade into the distance, but the echo of flames follows you all the way to the horizon. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left to smoulder in peace. As the last ember of Montsegur fades into starlight, let your own thoughts settle like ash on still water. The mountains breathe slow and steady around you, the wind a whisper of ancient hymns. You are safe here, wrapped in the hush of history's gentlest ghosts. Let the crosses blur into dreams, the flames into warmth, the perfecti into guardians at your bedside. Tomorrow can wait with its noise and hurry. Tonight belongs to silence and the soft rise of your own breath. Drift now, carried on the smoke of stories that never truly end. The fire is banked, the night is kind, and the world will keep its wonders until morning. Sleep deep, traveler, sweet dreams. You perch on a rain-slick wall outside the Doge's palace in Venice, 1361. The canal below reflecting torches like molten gold. The night air smells of salt, tar, and the faint sweetness of overripe figs. 2 merchants, identical twins, both named Marco, both draped in the same crimson velvet, stand on the Rialto Bridge, arguing over the price of pepper. Their voices echo off the water, sharp as thrown knives. One Marco accuses the other of short-weighting the sacks. The other counters with claims of counterfeit seals. The crowd gathers, half drunk on grappa and gossip, placing bets on who'll draw steel first. You watch as the argument escalates to drawn daggers, identical blades, same family crest etched on the pommel. The brothers lunge in perfect mirror image, steel flashing. The crowd gasps as both Marcos fall simultaneously, each dagger buried in the other's heart. They collapse back to back, still locked in their deadly embrace, blood pooling into a single crimson puddle that reflects the moon like a broken mirror. The chronicler scribbles, "Twin merchants, twin deaths, one very confused notary." The crowd disperses, muttering about curses and bad bookkeeping. You linger, noting the exact angle of the wounds, mirror images, down to the millimeter. Fast forward exactly 100 years. Same bridge, same night, same crimson velvet. Another pair of Marco twins, great-grandsons, same name, same pepper obsession, stand in the exact same spot. The argument is eerily familiar. Short wait, counterfeit seals, the works. The crowd gathers, déjà vu thick as the fog rolling in from the lagoon. You time it with a water clock. Same words, same gestures, same daggers drawn. The lunge, the fall, the back-to-back collapse. The puddle forms again, reflecting the same moon. The chronicler, now a ghost with ink-stained fingers, writes the exact same line. The crowd invents a new proverb. Never trust a Marco on the Rialto. The bridge becomes legend. Lovers avoid it on foggy nights. Merchants rename their ships not Marco. Bards sing the ballad of the Crimson Twins. Taverns toast to brothers who share everything, even death. You hear a gondolier use the phrase while dodging a drunk tourist. The tourist tips anyway. Some lessons are universal. Historians still argue whether the bridge is cursed, the daggers enchanted, or the Marcos just really bad at sharing. You vote sharing. You camp on the Rialto one moonless night, fog curling like cigarette smoke. You toast the twins with grappa and swear you hear footsteps. 4 boots, perfectly synced, echoing into legend. A gull cries overhead. You nod. Message received. You leave Venice at dawn, the canal water black as ink. Behind you, the bridge is quiet, but the fog carries the faint clink of daggers that never quite sheathe. You don't look back. Some vendettas aren't ended by blood. They're renewed by it. You walk the old salt road out of the city, boots splashing through puddles that reflect the first light of morning. The air smells of brine and distant bakeries, the same scent that clung to the Marcos as they fell. You think about mirrors and mistakes, about blood and brotherhood, about 2 men who lived the same life and died the same death because some stories refuse to break the pattern. You smile, because some coincidences are just history practicing its choreography. You reach the mainland as the bells of San Marco toll prime, the sound rolling across the lagoon like a gentle wave. Somewhere, a merchant checks his scales twice. Somewhere, a child traces the family crest in the dust and asks why it bleeds. And somewhere, deep in the canal, the Marcos sleep entwined, their daggers still warm from the fight. You pause at a wayside shrine, 2 daggers crossed now, carved side by side, and leave a peppercorn from the Rialto. The wind picks it up, carries it into the water, and for a heartbeat, the canal shimmers like spilled blood. You close your eyes and listen. The argument is softer now, slower, like a lullaby for the tides themselves. You open your eyes. The shrine is empty, the peppercorn gone, the moment broken like a spell. You walk on, the road stretching ahead like a promise kept. Behind you, the bells fade into the distance, but the echo of steel follows you all the way to the horizon. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left to duel in peace. As the last ripple of the Rialto fades into morning light, let your own thoughts settle like silt in still water. The canals breathe slow and steady around you, the fog a whisper of ancient quarrels. You are safe here, wrapped in the hush of history's gentlest ghosts. Let the daggers blur into dreams, the blood into wine, the Marcos into guardians at your bedside. Tomorrow can wait with its noise and hurry. Tonight belongs to silence and the soft lap of your own breath. Drift now, carried on the tide of stories that never truly end. The bridge is quiet, the night is kind, and the world will keep its wonders until morning. Sleep deep, traveler. Sweet dreams. You squat in the candlelit gloom of a scriptorium in Fleury Abbey, 1120, the air heavy with beeswax, wet wool, and the scratch of quills on vellum. Brother Grimald, a monk with a tonsure like a misaligned halo and a reputation for visions, hunches over a fresh sheet of the Miracles of Saint Benedict. He's been at it for hours, eyes bloodshot, tongue poking from the corner of his mouth like a child colouring outside the lines. The abbot hovers, impatient for a new fundraising relic. Grimald dips his goose feather, writes in bold unseals, "This book shall never be consumed by fire, for the saint guards his own." He underlines it 3 times, blows the ink dry, and beams. You smell smoke already, and the hearth is cold. 3 nights later, lightning splits the sky like divine criticism. The abbey roof ignites. Flames race along the rafters with the enthusiasm of a crusader on payday. You join the bucket line, passing sloshing pails while the scriptorium windows burst outward in showers of glass and hubris. The heat blisters your palms. The smoke tastes of charred parchment and melted pride. By dawn, the abbey is a blackened skeleton, ribs of stone still glowing. The monks sift through ashes, weeping over lost psalters, and one very singed copy of the Song of Songs. Then someone shouts. You push through the crowd and see it. A single parchment, pristine, lying atop a pile of cinders like a lily in a battlefield. It's Grimald's page, the boast intact, gold leaf gleaming. The monks fall to their knees, calling it a miracle. You call it divine sarcasm with a side of 3rd-degree burns. The abbot declares a new feast day. The cook declares the stew ruined. You pocket a corner of charred vellum that reads, "Shall never," and feel the universe wink. Word spreads faster than the fire did. Pilgrims arrive to gawk at the page, now framed in silver and displayed in the rebuilt chapter house. One monk swears the letters glow at midnight. Another swears the paper smells of roses. You sniff it at midnight. It smells of smoke and smugness. The abbey becomes famous. Donations pour in. The monks rebuild bigger, better, and, crucially, without lightning rods, because faith. 40 years later, you're back for the anniversary feast. The new library is a marvel of vaulted ceilings and iron-bound doors. The boastful page hangs center stage, backlit by candles. The abbot raises a toast. To divine protection. Lightning answers. The tower takes another hit. The roof caves, and the library burns hotter than before. You dive for cover as the silver frame melts like butter. When the smoke clears, guess what's intact? The same damn page, now slightly curled, but still readable. The monks are beyond weeping. They're laughing hysterically. You join in, because at this point it's either laugh or convert to paganism. Another century, another boast. 1260, same abbey, same scriptorium, same Tuesday in Lent. Brother Anselm, yes, another one, pens a new manuscript. These words shall endure all flame, for Benedict watches. Underlines it 4 times. Lightning, fire, ashes, miracle. The page survives again, now with a faint scorch halo that looks suspiciously like a smirk. The monks start a betting pool. How many underlines until God gets bored? The cycle becomes legend. Every few decades, a monk writes the boast. Lightning obliges. The page survives. The abbey's library burns 6 times between 1120 and 1400. Each blaze leaving the latest boastful leaf untouched. Pilgrims call it the unburnable prophecy. Merchants sell ash-proof parchment, guaranteed for 1 fire or your money back. You buy a sheet, test it with a candle. It sings. The vendor shrugs. Divine fine print. Historians still argue whether the parchment was treated with secret alum, the abbey built on a lightning magnet, or God running the longest dad joke in Christendom. You vote dad joke. You camp in the rebuilt cloister one midsummer night, fireflies drifting like slow sparks. You toast the monks with watered wine and swear you hear thunder. Distant, amused, perfectly timed. A nightjar calls. You nod. Message received. You leave Fleury at dawn, the unburnable page warm under your palm. Behind you, the cloister is quiet, but the wind carries the faint crackle of flames that never quite win. You don't look back. Some prophecies aren't kept by saints. They're kept by punchlines. You walk the old pilgrim road down the Loire, boots crunching on gravel that remembers every footstep. The air smells of river mist and distant bakeries, the same scent that clung to the monks as they fled the flames. You think about ink and irony, about boasts and burn marks, about pages that survive because the universe loves a good callback. You smile because some miracles don't need faith to endure. They just need timing. You reach the riverbank as the bells of a distant monastery toll prime, the sound rolling across the water like a gentle wave. Somewhere, a monk dips his quill and underlines "never" 5 times. Somewhere, a cloud gathers, patient as a chronicler. And somewhere, deep in the ashes, the unburnable page waits for its next curtain call. You pause at a wayside shrine, 6 pages now, framed side by side, and leave a sprig of lavender from the cloister garden. The wind picks it up, carries it upward, and for a heartbeat, the air shimmers like heat over embers. You close your eyes and listen. The laughter is softer now, slower, like a lullaby for the scriptorium itself. You open your eyes. The shrine is empty, the lavender gone, the moment broken like a spell. You walk on, the road stretching ahead like a promise kept. Behind you, the bells fade into the distance, but the echo of thunder follows you all the way to the horizon. You don't look back. Some coincidences are best left to smoulder in peace. As the last ember of Fleury fades into morning mist, let your own thoughts settle like ash on still water. The river breathes slow and steady beside you, the wind a whisper of ancient quills. You are safe here, wrapped in the hush of history's gentlest ghosts. Let the pages blur into dreams, the flames into warmth, the monks into guardians at your bedside. Tomorrow can wait, with its noise and hurry. Tonight belongs to silence and the soft rise of your own breath. Drift now, carried on the smoke of stories that never truly end. The fire is banked, the night is kind, and the world will keep its wonders until morning. Sleep deep, traveler, sweet dreams. You stand ankle deep in the churned mud of the Agincourt battlefield. October 25th, 1415. The rain a cold curtain, and the air thick with the iron stink of blood, and the sour reek of fear. King Henry V, Harry to his men, the mirror of all Christian kings to the chroniclers, sits his grey destrier at the centre of the English line, mud-spattered, voice hoarse from shouting orders in French and English. The French outnumber them 5-1, their knights glittering like a steel tide. You clutch a longbow, fingers numb on the yew, and watch Henry raise his visor to scan the sky. A single shaft whistles down, French, fletched with raven feathers, and punches clean through the king's helmet, just above the right eye. Henry sags, dead before he hits the ground. The English line wavers. The French cheer. The battle tilts like a seesaw greased with royal blood. Fast forward exactly 100 years. Same field, same date, same reign. Another Henry. Henry VIII now. Same jaw, same temper. Rides out to inspect the English vanguard in a ceremonial tilt against the French. He's wearing a gilded bassinet for show, not war, but the sky doesn't care. A single arrow, English this time, fletched with goose feathers, arcs from a nervous archer's misfire, and punches clean through the king's helmet, just above the right eye. Henry topples, dead before he hits the mud. The English line freezes. The French stare in stunned silence. The chronicler, now a ghost with a quill and déjà vu, writes the exact same line. Struck in the head by a single shaft, the king fell.